Just what is it that you want to do?
Well, we want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to be free to ride. And we want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded. And we want to have a good time. And that's what we're going to do.
Okay, you ready? Oh, my goodness. I'm laughing, dear listeners, but it's a sad day because a giant, a titan of cinema as we used to know it, as movies as they used to be, from the days when cinema was arguably the primary art form. And we can talk about art here in this quick few minutes we've got for this. This person has left us. Roger Corman.
Yes, Roger Corman, as you all know, passed away last week, 98 years old.
Under budget.
He passed away under budget. He would be glad, and perhaps on schedule. I don't know. That is a good long life, and we decided we'd do a little episode to pay tribute to him. Now, Jett, I freely acknowledge you've definitely seen many more Roger Corman movies than I have, but most of us have seen lots of films that were influenced by Roger Corman, or indeed their directors were mentored by Roger Corman. Jett, can I tell the listener what you communicated to me on Saturday night when his death was announced?
Yes, you can. And for folks who don't know, Roger Corman, legendary director and producer of very, very low budget films. That doesn't really get into why so many people are mourning his passing, but please go ahead, Gareth.
So you texted me to say that he was gone, and you were clearly genuinely moved, and had even, what you described appeared to be real, authentic grief.
That's correct.
I want to ask you about that, because we do have these I think they're called parasocial relationships with people we've never met. I'm assuming you never actually met Roger Corman.
No, but I did meet Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Well, I was thinking that
and also Mr. Big, Bird Eye Gordon. But Corman towered
so Corman
over
you
them
never
all.
met, and yet you cried at his passing. Will you tell us why?
I've been married, about a year and a half now. I've known my wife for 5 years. Oh, I've known my wife for a lot longer, but we've been together for 5 years. She has never seen me like that, she told me. I sobbed uncontrollably for, 20 minutes, genuine grief. I think at its heart, what I was mourning was the passing of the movies as I know them. Because when I was a kid, in the pre-streaming age, there are repertory cinemas. There was where I lived, there were 7 different cinemas within walking distance. And one of those was a multiplex within walking distance. And there were tons of people. You would go to the movies. It was a thing. And of course, movies have gone through a lot of different phases. There was the silent era. Then movies would have, newsreels and cartoons and B-pictures. Then television came along and changed that. But people used to go to the movies, and we would just review Challengers. And when I went to Challengers, I didn't go to a critic screening. I just paid my monies and took my chances. And I was the only one in the theater. And it was the middle of the day, weekday, sure. Okay, I'm the only one in the theater. One of our upcoming episodes is going to be on this, one of these new ape pictures. I don't know, what is it? It's Stratosphere of the Apes, truck wagon of the apes, Ford F-150 of the apes, whatever it is. I don't know.
iTunes discount gift card of the apes.
iTunes doesn't exist anymore. It's now Apple Music. Things change.
I'm mourning the end of streaming as I knew it as I was growing up.
Exactly. I went to a midday screening on Saturday, and there was only a couple of people. And when I was growing up as a kid, even if it was an early screening, there would be a crowd of some kind for a big new blockbuster like Land Rover of the Apes.
And they wouldn't know everything that was going to happen in the movie.
And they wouldn't. Well, we're going to talk about that in our review of the film, which will be released soon after this little Roger Corman appreciation. My point is that films aren't the art form that they were. There's a documentary about Roger Corman in which Martin Scorsese says that his films, he says, they weren't encumbered with having to deal with art. But the reason I mourn so much Roger Corman is that with him gone, all that institutional knowledge, right? There's that Laurie Anderson, the artist musician. She sings a song. And she's got a line that when my father died, it was like a library burning down. Corman is gone, and with it, the movies as we knew them. Because I think arguably the reason why he's so famous to film aficionados now is because of how many people he fostered, kickstarted into Hollywood, the folks that became sort of the new Hollywood. Here's a list of just some of the people that he helped start their careers with. Some of them had already had jobs in the movies, but he really pushed them in that direction to be directors and producers and actors. Jack Nicholson, Joe Dante, John Sayles, Ron Howard, Martin Scorsese, Pauly Platt, the great Pauly Platt, Jonathan Demme, Penelope Spheris, Peter Bogdanovich, James Cameron, Francis Ford Coppola, Robert De Niro, maybe Gail Ann Hurd, Dick Miller, of course, Lee Van Cleef, sure, Alan Arkush, Monty Hellman, William Shatner.
Late friend of the show, Monty Hellman.
Friend of the show, Monty Hellman. I like to think all these folks could be friends of the show. Paul Bartel, Mary Warren. The point is that
nobody of significance.
People got jobs with him when they were young, and he worked the hell out of them. But that sort of film school of Roger Corman, if they could survive that kind of being exploited and doing all the different jobs, they could go on to do something. Peter Bogdanovich said that, quote, I went from getting the laundry to directing the picture in 3 weeks. Altogether, I worked 22 weeks, pre-production, shooting, second unit, cutting, dubbing. I haven't learned as much since. And that kind of school of Roger Corman, as Tarantino said when he gave him an honorary Lifetime Achievement Oscar, is what's so incredibly important. And his passing marks the end of a Hollywood that is now gone. And some of this is going to relate actually to the Skyscraper of the Planet of the Apes that we're going to be talking about in another show this week. Does any of that make sense? Cried like a baby.
It does, and I'm watching that documentary, which is called Corman's World, and I liked it. It was informative,
sure.
And there was something. It was kind of clear that some of the time they had just tried to be, I don't know, do something different with what's available, and something that kind of I find irritating about a lot of biographical documentaries is when you get the talking heads. I don't mean David Byrne's band, but you get the individuals talking.
Was that a joke?
Not a good one. Not a good one.
Fair
and
enough.
the other members of Talking Heads would probably beg to differ with the characterization that it was David Byrne's band. So when you get the
hot take,
they're all great. They're all great. And
Tom Club for the win.
If you haven't seen American Utopia, see American Utopia. David Byrne concert film that Spike Lee directed a few years ago. Anyway, when you get, these pieces to camera where individuals are speaking, they're usually sitting in a chair facing the same direction, framed exactly the same way. This film, Corman's World, does something that's at least visually creative with all of its talking heads, and they speak with such love and affection for this man, Roger Corman. I had heard him interviewed and watched him interviewed many times. He was blessed with a voice that I don't know why he didn't record audiobooks. He would have been a magnificent late night radio host, a kind of a call-in host. Frankly, when you see him interviewed in this film, there's one very striking moment where he's been in. It looks to me like it was probably the early 80s. He was asked about the budget for his movies, because his movies were famously as cheap as they could possibly be made. And he was asked about some of the most expensive movies being made at the time, which the interviewer said would cost as much as $30 million.
Yes.
And Roger Corman actually agrees that this is obscene. And
yes,
that money would be better spent redeveloping housing for people of limited means. This was
he used the word slums. I think we don't use that word anymore.
Right.
He says slums.
This is a man of heart. And if you look at the film that certainly his brother, Gene Corman, his producing partner, I guess along with or prior to marrying Julie, the film that he's probably proudest of, that he considers to be the best film that he ever made, is one of the most politically radical films ever made in Hollywood.
The Intruder.
It's a film called The Intruder from 1964.
Something like that.
Which I once saw in somebody's living room on a 16mm print, which made it feel somehow even more authentic. A film with William Shatner about an interloper who comes into a southern town and tries to prevent integration. And it's really an extraordinary film, one of the most politically radical films I've ever seen made in Hollywood. He didn't get to make lots of films like that. So my question to you, Jett, and I saw you nodding at the mellifluousness of his voice. He does appear to have been a kind man, a good man, a person who people thought of with great affection, a person who knew how to mentor people. And yes, they make jokes about they were exploited, and maybe they were, and that should be discussed, but it doesn't seem like people felt that they lost in the end. They benefited from this mentoring. And as he famously said to Ron Howard, if you do a good job for me, you'll never have to work on this film. You'll never have to work for me again. What do you think about this idea that Roger Corman himself appears to have been a good human, or a human whose goodness was on the surface? And what do you think about the possibility that your grief at his passing is as much to do with what you were projecting onto him as a person, not just as an artist or as a public figure?
Well, the thing is, you can look at the films and say, oh, these are just, terrible, schlock movies. But there must be something about the person that he shepherded in some way. So many people who created some of the greatest works of filmic art of the 20th century in the English language. There has to be something there. That's not a coincidence. Of course, I'm referring to James Cameron's True Lies. I'm not really. It's got some good stuff in it. I mean, that bit with the limousine on the Florida Keys Bridge. Love the Florida Keys Bridge. Love that. And Timothy Dalton's License to Kill. Love me some License to Kill. No, there has to be something.
Yes, just for completion's sake, almost as good as True Lies would be, for instance, John Sayles' Matewan, or Francis Coppola's The Conversation, or Bogdanovich's The Last Picture Show, or Scorsese's Silence. But yes, True Lies is the Corman legacy, according to my beloved co-host.
You mentioned John Sayles. You talk about, they don't shoot everybody in the studio. If you had asked me, let's say they're going to shoot John Sayles' documentary, I would have said, where are they going to shoot him? He's going to be sitting on a stoop maybe in Brooklyn.
Probably in Brooklyn, yes.
Probably in Brooklyn.
Wearing the blue. Can I tell you something about John Sayles? That blue shirt that he wears in every interview.
That's his interview shirt.
I have met John Sayles on 3 occasions.
Did he wear the shirt?
He was wearing that blue shirt every time.
I love me some brother from another planet. That's eight man out. Matewan, John Sayles. Come on, man. He's the best.
Limbo.
Did John Sayles did he do a rewrite on Piranha? Did he do Piranha? I mean, he probably did Death Race 2000.
I think he might actually have been the first writer on Piranha.
I think that sounds.
No.
Oh no!
It might have been. And dear listener, I know you come to the Film Talk for your authentic film Esoteria.
That sounds like the name of a stripper villain in Ed Wood film. It's Esoteria. You ever see Orgy of the Dead, by the way?
Which of the Dead?
Orgy of the Dead, Ed Wood. It's nothing but bad one strip act after another a couple's forced to watch. It's something.
To go back to the Esoteria, without looking it up, I think John Sayles may have written the sequel. Did he not write the sequel to Piranha? Or did Cameron direct the sequel to Piranha? The Spawning? I've never seen any Piranha movies. Never seen any Piranha movies. No,
I haven't either. I mean, I believe that Cameron probably, he directed some parts of Piranha. That's where famously, I think he had that nightmare in an Italian hotel room where they're re-editing Piranha 2, where it's a disaster. He has this fever dream, and that's where he had that dream of a metal robot coming out of the flames and inspired Terminator.
Lord of, if only that had influenced his future career. Back to the question.
Yes.
Are you grieving your projected kindness of Roger Corman, as well as
and grieving the end of cinema?
You're making the case that anyone who influenced these people there's something to. I mean, there may actually be something to mourn here about. He didn't get to make all that many good films.
Well, it comes up in that documentary and some other things about, Corman. There are people that start, sort of low rent production houses like a New Line, and they do the Freddy Krueger movies, and then they splash out on Lord of the Rings. And Corman didn't do that, right? Corman family is talking to somebody in his office, and they're talking about how, the budget of a film, and Corman walks over and turns off the air conditioner because it's going to cost money. But he had no problem losing money distributing films of Fellini or Kurosawa or Bergman. For whatever reason, Corman himself did not make the leap to do higher budget stuff. He was so conscious about money. It feels like maybe he thought that was too much of a risk to spend millions. Though he did do films like, Battle Beyond the Stars, which takes place often on planet Akira, so it's a remake of Seven Samurai. You see what he's doing there. And maybe was very aware of the industry. It was a common mistake, I would argue, for people to start low budget and they put all their money in and they lose something, right? Think about the guys, was it Charles Band? They do The Reanimator and From Beyond, great movies. And they splurge out big budget for them on a film like Robot Jox, which I love Robot Jox, but, it didn't make any money. So Corman was really focused on that bottom line. I'm just going to pick at random one year. These are the films he directed in 1957. 1957, he directed Naked Paradise, Not of This Earth, the classic Attack of the Crab Monsters, Rock All Night, The Undead, Teenage Doll, Carnival Rock, and Sorority Girl. All in 1957. So he was about quick turnaround.
It's more films than I've ever directed in one year.
Possibly than anybody's. Maybe Fassbender, right? Fassbender probably could have directed that many and then done a 20-hour miniseries and 3 stage productions. But
was he happy? Was he happy? I don't think he was happy. And Roger, I mean, I meant that as a joke, but I mean, Roger Corman does appear to have been a happy person.
He seemed pretty stable.
Other than The Intruder, what's one Roger Corman film that you would recommend the listener to see?
Well, I would probably the ones that he directed, not the ones that he produced, because there's films of people of his that he produced that came out of he had various different names for his studios. He had agreements with the American International Pictures. They're that company that notoriously bought the distribution rights to Mad Max and then dubbed all the actors. The Australian actors, and that's the version that I grew up with, and it's rough. We got to give them back their heroes, Max.
Do you think someone could do that for us?
I personally, this is not really me. I've just hired somebody. I've hired Jeff Lowe. Jeff is actually doing the show, right? He's doing a great job. He's actually he's just an AI.
Well done, Jeff. Well done, Jeff.
You would talk about money-making prowess. So when he directed a movie, I think it was the second film. Was it the second film he directed called The Fast and the Furious? Okay. So they're going to do a remake, or they want to buy what a title. They wanted, what is it, Universal? Is it Universal, I think? Wanted that title. So they offered him, I don't know, X hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever it is. We want that title, Roger. And the agreement, you know the story? The agreement he struck with them is like, I don't want any money. I just want access in perpetuity to your entire stock library. So then he could use shots of avalanches, car chases, crashes from the history of Universal. I mean, that's Roger Corman. I'd recommend The Trip, probably, with Peter Fonda. That's a really interesting film, avant-garde. And any of the Poe films. The Poe films are great. They're incredible colors, beautiful compositions, great storytelling. Those are they're great movies. With Vincent Price, The Tomb of Ligeia, The Raven, The Pit and Pendulum was one of my favorites. So any of those. Little Shop of Horrors, he directed the original. They shot that in 2 days. 2 days. Maybe they wrote it an hour. But I would go with The Trip or The Wild Angels. And The Wild Angels is the one that has that famous funeral scene in which the religious figure overseeing the funeral scene is upset at all these bikers. Like, what do you want? And Peter Fonda tells him, just want to be free, man. And you know who I felt was free, even though he was in business and had to turn a buck? Roger Corman. And that's a reason I mourn, I think. Roger Corman was free.